incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. Authorities say the gas appears to be hydrogen and is moving toward the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Drake University confirms the explosions, for the observations rather, from Mount Jennings Observatory. He describes the phenomena as like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun. WHO Radio will keep an eye on the situation and give further reports as necessary. I'm Sue Pritchard on Des Moines News Station, 1040 WHO Radio. Now back to TalkNet.
What I say.
I mean, you believe that, you believe in it too. As soon as somebody says that, they lead themselves. They're leading with their chin.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone knows that everyone makes errors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we don't. When as soon as somebody says we never lose anything, bet your life on something.
So anyway, I left the library minus my library card.
All right.
But with my bill.
You've been defrocked here.
Oh yeah.
The epaulets were torn off your coat.
And on my little pony ride home, I thought, you're ready.
This is Sue Pritchard again in the WHO Radio newsroom. The National Weather Service has requested that observatories across the country keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. As WHO Radio News reported moments ago, explosions are occurring at regular intervals on the surface of the planet. Stay tuned to WHO Radio for further details. I'm Sue Pritchard on Des Moines News Station, 1040 WHO Radio. Now back to TalkNet.
Hello there.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Bruce. How are you?
I am very well, thank you.
I appreciate you taking my call. About 12 years, well, first of all, the reason I'm calling is I have a house that's not selling in another state. And 12 years ago, I bought the house, or 13 years ago, I guess. The house was built in 1950. It's a 5-bedroom with 1.5 baths.
Ooh, that's a biggie.
It's in the oldest neighborhood in a small, affluent suburban town, which has the top school system.
This is Sue Pritchard in the WHO Radio newsroom, continuing our coverage of the explosions, or apparent explosions, on the planet Mars. Kevin Teal is standing by now at the observatory of Drake University with the latest. Kevin?
Thank you, Sue. I'm at the Drake Observatory in the middle of the Waveland Golf Course. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast sort of a frosty glow over the huge telescope. Standing directly above me on a small platform, peering through the giant lens, is Professor Richard Pearson, who is the astronomer here at Drake. Professor Pearson has been watching the situation on Mars and is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world, so we might be interrupted from time to time by communications. Professor Pearson, may I ask you a few questions?
Yes, of course.
Professor, what do you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Kevin. A red disk swimming in a blue sea, transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be at the point nearest Earth, in opposition, as we call it.
What's the significance of those transverse stripes, Professor?
Well, they're not canals, although that's the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. As the pictures taken by the Viking spacecraft have shown us, those stripes are merely the result of geological differences peculiar to the planet.
Then you're convinced as a scientist that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars?
The odds against it are millions to 1.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far away is Mars from the Earth?
Oh, approximately 45 million miles.
Well, that certainly seems a safe enough distance.
Oh, thank you, Diane.
Professor Pearson has just handed a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that you're listening to Des Moines News Station, 1040 WHO Radio. I'm Kevin Teal at the Drake Observatory with astronomer Professor Richard Pearson. Professor Pearson has just handed me the message which he has just received. Professor, may I read this on the air?
Certainly, Kevin.
This is a fax from a Dr. Gray of the Seismological Institute in San Francisco. It reads, quote, 6:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of 4.2 on the Richter scale occurring within a radius of 25 miles of Des Moines. Please investigate. Signed, Dr. Lloyd Gray, Chief of Seismology. Professor Pearson, could this have anything to do with the disturbances observed on Mars?
Hardly. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this time is merely a coincidence. However, we will conduct a search as requested.
Oh, thank you, Professor. Reporting from Drake Observatory, I'm Kevin Teal on Des Moines News Station 1040 WHO Radio. Now back to Bruce Williams and TalkNet in progress.
All kinds of wonderful benefits, and it's going to be the first time I'm going to be on the road. It's for a national, big conglomerate, international company, as a representative. And
you use a salesman, right?
Basically, calling on dealers.
All right.
And
Chuck Shockley here in the WHO Radio newsroom with the latest from the Associated Press. Macmillan University in Toronto, Canada reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between 6:45 and 8:10 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, this confirms earlier reports received from American observatories. Now, closer to home comes a special announcement from Polk County authorities. They report that about 7:50 p.m., a huge flaming object believed to be a meteorite fell on a farm in Dallas County near Adel, about 20 miles west of Des Moines. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of several hundred miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far away as Ames. WHO Radio's Jody Chapman is en route to the scene and will have a special report coming up as soon as she arrives at the site. Until then, I'm Chuck Shockley on Des Moines News Station 1040 WHO Radio.
It's enough to pay for a nice car, but once I put on 80,000 miles, that car's not going to be worth what I'm going to owe.
That's right. And you say you really can't afford. Well, how many?
Chuck Shockley in the WHO Radio newsroom. Let's go now live to Jody Chapman, who is at the site of that fallen meteorite. Jody?
Thanks, Chuck. Well, I hardly know where to begin to paint for you a word picture of the strange scene before my eyes. It's like something out of a modern Arabian Nights. I see Professor Pearson from Drake University has already arrived, and I just got here, and I really haven't had much of a chance to look around yet. Oh, I guess that's it. Yes, that's the thing, directly in front of me, half buried in a pit. Now, it must have struck with some terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree. It must have hit on the way down. And what I can see of the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor, at least not like any meteor I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has a diameter of, what would you say, Professor Pearson?
Roughly 30 yards.
About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is, well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is kind of yellowish white. Now, there's some curious spectators now pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts to keep them back by the police. Would you guys mind standing off to one
Jody,
side?
Chuck Shockley here, back in the WHO Radio newsroom. We have an eyewitness report of the crash landing of the meteorite from WHO Radio's own Van Harden, who was in Adel when the thing crashed. Van, can you tell us what happened there tonight?
Well, Chuck, I was listening to the radio here, and the boys were with me.
Van, we're having a bit of trouble on the phone. Can you begin again?
Pardon me?
I said we're having a bit of trouble with the phone. Can you begin again?
Well, yes, I was listening to the radio with my boys, and Professor Pearson was on talking about Mars.
And that's when you saw something?
Well, not at first. First I heard something.
What did you hear?
Well, it was kind of like a hissing sound. It was kind of like, almost like a bottle rocket.
Then what happened?
Well, I turned and looked out the window, and I would have sworn I was asleep. I saw kind of a greeny streak, and then a big boom, and something smacked the ground and knocked me and the boys right out of the chair.
Thank you, Van Harten, an eyewitness to the crash landing. Now, let's go back out to Dallas County and check in with Jody Chapman. Jody?
Chuck, I wish I could convey this atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars are parked at the field and balcony, and the police are trying to rope off the roadway leading into the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. Now, the headlights are throwing an enormous spot at the pit where this object is half buried, and some of them are daring, or can you believe it? They're even venturing near the edge. There's one man that wants to touch the thing, and he's having an argument with the state trooper. Nope, looks like the trooper wins. And now there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but it's becoming more distinct. Maybe you've caught it already in your radio. Listen. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to come from inside the object. I'll move the microphone nearer. Here. Can you hear it? Now, I'm not more than 25 feet away now. Professor Pearson's also near me now. Professor, can you Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing?
Well, it's possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing's definitely extraterrestrial. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in a meteorite. This thing is smooth and, as you can see, a cylindrical
Just a minute. Something's happening. This is amazing. The end of the thing is beginning to flake off. That top is beginning to rotate like a screw. It must be hollow. Oh, my God, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. Oh, wait a minute. Now someone's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something. I can see peering out of that black hole 2 glowing discs. Are they eyes? Geez, I don't know. It might be a face. It might be... Oh, my God, now there's something wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake. And there's another one, and another one, and... Oh, yuck. They look like tentacles to me. I can see the thing's body. It's about as large as a bear, and it seems to glisten like wet leather. But that face... It's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. The eyes are black, and they gleam like snake skin, and that mouth is, how do I describe it, V-shaped, and has saliva dripping from its rimless lips that are quivering and pulsating. That alien, or whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighted down by, I don't know, gravity or something. Uh-oh, the thing is raising up. The crowd's moving back. They've seen enough. This is the most incredible experience. I can't find the words. I'm pulling the microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to take a break here while I move to a new position. Hold on, I'll be back.
This is Chuck Shockley again in the WHO radio newsroom, continuing our coverage of the thing which crashed into rural Dallas County about an hour ago. The thing, whatever it is, was initially believed to have been a meteorite. But as you have just heard from Jody Chapman, who's on the scene, there are some kind of creatures inside the cylindrical object. Is she there? Now, let's return to Jody Chapman.
Chuck, I'm here now behind a stone wall on the Wilmot's farm in rural Dallas County. From here I get a sweeping view of the whole scene, and I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk and as long as I can see. More state troopers have arrived now, and they're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit, about 30 of them or so. And believe me, there's no need to push back the crowd now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain is conferring with someone. I can't quite make out who it is. It's Professor Pearson. I believe it is. And they have now parted. The professor's moving around to one side. He's studying the object while the captain and 2 policemen advance with something in their hands. I can make it out now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole. That's a flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means... Wait! Something's happening. A hump shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What is that? Oh, my God, there's a jet of flame springing from that mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It hits them head on. Oh, my God, they're bursting into flame. That whole field caught fire. The woods, the barns, the gas tanks, the cars, it's burning everywhere. It's coming this way.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've apparently lost contact momentarily with our mobile broadcast unit out in Adel. We'll return to Jody Chapman at our first opportunity. In the meantime, this is Chuck Shockley in the WHO radio newsroom. We continue our coverage of the thing which crash-landed in Dallas County tonight. WHO radio's Jess Peterson has joined me now in the studio with the latest information. Jess?
We have a late bulletin now from Iowa City. Professor Gustav Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the Iowa Astronomical Society at the University of Iowa, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet.
Jess, we still have not regained our broadcast link from rural Dallas County. So I'll tell you what, we'll return you now to TalkNet until we have more information on the thing, the object which crash-landed there a short time ago. Chuck Shockley, WHO Radio News.
If you're looking for a reply, and one lady has written to me 3 times, 2 pieces of mail here from her. She returned a picture. She's been very, but she hasn't put a phone number in, and she has an unlisted telephone number. I would suggest on occasion.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Shockley here in the WHO Radio Newsroom. We have just received a message that came in from rural Dallas County by telephone. Just a moment. At least 140 people, including 23 state troopers, lie dead in a field north of Adel in Dallas County. Their bodies burned and distorted beyond all possible recognition. On the WHO Radio Newsline is Brigadier General Montgomery Smith of the Iowa National Guard at Camp Dodge. General?
I have been requested by the governor of Iowa to place the counties of Polk, Dallas, and Warren counties under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area except by special pass issued by state or military authorities. 4 companies of the National Guard have been dispatched to Dallas County from Camp Dodge and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you.
That was General Montgomery Smith, commanding the Iowa National Guard from Camp Dodge up in Johnston. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe in rural Dallas County are coming in. Jess Peterson joining me again in the studio with more information. Jess?
The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawled back into their pit and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of the firemen to recover the bodies and extinguish the fire. Mutual aid fire departments from Polk and Dallas counties are fighting the fires which menace the entire countryside.
Thank you, Jess. We've been unable to reestablish any kind of contact with our mobile broadcast unit north of Adel, but we hope to be able to return you to Jody Chapman on the scene as soon as possible. In the meantime, let's now go to just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Bob Quinn has just informed me that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy in Dallas County tonight. WHO Radio's Sue Pritchard is with Professor Richard Pearson at a farmhouse near Adel. Sue?
Chuck, I'm here at a farmhouse near Adel where an emergency observation post has been set up. Professor Pearson, as a scientist, what are your impressions of what has happened here tonight?
Well, of the creatures in the rocket cylinder here, I can give you no authoritative information, either as to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here on Earth. Now, of their destructive element, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to the weapon as a heat ray. It is my guess that in some way they are able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture on the origin of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. We'll have more from the scene in a few moments. Sue Pritchard, WHO Radio News.
Thank you, Sue. We now have another report from Camp Dodge. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of WHO Radio's Jody Chapman has been identified at a temporary morgue being set up at the Dallas County Fairgrounds. Again, Jody Chapman was among those killed tonight in Dallas County. More reports flooding into the WHO Radio newsroom now. Here's Jess.
Chuck, the director of the Red Cross reports that Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the field headquarters of the National Guard in Dallas County. And we have another report from the Iowa State Patrol saying that the fires in the fields around the crash site are now under control. And troopers are reporting all's quiet in the pit and no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder.
And now a special statement from Chuck Jewell, the general manager of WHO Radio.
We have just received a request from the National Guard to place at their disposal our entire broadcast facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation and believing that radio has the responsibility to serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity at all times, we now turn WHO Radio over to the Iowa National Guard.
We now take you to the field headquarters of the National Guard near Adel.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Company of the Iowa National Guard, now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Adel, Iowa. situations arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now completely under control. The cylindrical object, which lies in a pit directly below our position, is surrounded on all sides by 8 brigades of infantry, but adequately armed with M16 rifles and machine guns. All cause for alarm, if such cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. The things, or whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures can hardly stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the lights. It's almost like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke in the woods alongside Highway 169. Probably fire started by campers. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. A quick thrust and it will all be over. Now, wait a minute. I see something on top of the cylinder. No, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the farm here. 7,000 armed men closing in on an old metal tube. Oh, wait, that wasn't a shadow. It's something moving. Solid metal. Kind of a shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. Why? It's standing on legs, actually rearing up on some sort of metal framework. Now it's searching above the trees, and the searchlights are on it. Hold on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Iowa farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The short battle which took place tonight near Adel apparently has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with M16s and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine of the invaders. 7,000 soldiers, only 122 known survivors. The rest strewn over the battle area from just north of Adel to Dallas Center, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster or burned to cinders by its heat ray. WHO Radio's Gary Barrett now has more.
Chuck, the monster is now in control of central Iowa and has effectively cut the state through its center. Communications are down from Omaha to the Quad Cities. Amtrak railroad tracks across the state are torn, causing a passenger train derailment near Osceola. Highways to the north, the south, and the east are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and Army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have swelled Mason City, Cedar Rapids, and Iowa City. It's estimated to about twice their normal population. This time, martial law prevails throughout Iowa and western Illinois.
Excuse me, Gary. We take you now to Washington for a special report from ABC News on this national emergency. Here now is the Secretary of the Interior.
I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of the government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens, public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. Thank you.
That was Secretary of the Interior Winsenberg here on WHO Radio. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up here in the WHO Radio News studios. We call now on WHO Radio's Gary Barrett, who is joining me again. Gare?
Chuck, we've been told that most of central Iowa is blacked out due to the effect of the heat ray on power lines and electrical equipment. Astronomers are reporting continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The majority of these astronomers are of the opinion the enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. Now, locally, attempts have been made to locate Professor Richard Pearson of Drake University, who's observed the Martians at close range. It's feared, though, that he was lost in the most recent battle in Dallas County.
Gary, we now have a report from Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha. Reconnaissance aircraft report 3 Martian machines visible above the treetops, moving northeast towards Ames, with population fleeing ahead of them. They report that the heat ray is apparently not in use. While the machines are advancing about 50 miles an hour, they are picking their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid destructions of towns and countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and primary roads. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and to disorganize human society.
Chuck, we have another bulletin now. This one's from Cedar Falls, Iowa, as men are fishing in George Wythe State Park have stumbled on a second cylinder similar to the first embedded in the bank of the lake there. The U.S. Army demolition troops are proceeding from Des Moines. They're proceeding to blow up this second invading unit before the cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged.
Another report now from the Sac Air Force Base in Omaha. Reconnaissance aircraft report enemy machines, now 3 in number, increasing in speed northeastward, kicking over houses and barns, and their apparent haste to join their allies in Cedar Falls. Machines have also been sighted by law enforcement officials near Sioux City. A squadron of Air Force bombers is now flying northeast in pursuit of the enemy machines. Scouting aircraft act as guides, keeping the speeding enemy in sight. Just a moment, please. I understand we've set up our portable broadcast unit inside a tank of the Iowa National Guard to bring you direct reports from within the zone of the advancing enemy. First, we take you to Troop B of the 194th Cavalry.
Gunner, simple, 3 on your machine. Identify. Fire! On the way! Short, half up, fire! On the way! Simple, left 2. Fire! On the way! We had one. Knocked out a bipod. It looks like they're repairing it. Re-engage. De-identified. Fire! On the way! Short. Half one. Left. Identified. Fire! On the way! Short. Half one. Alien machines lighting off smoke, sir. Get up! Get up! Get up!
Reporting to General Fairfax, headquarters, Second Offutt. This is Vogt, reporting to General Fairfax, headquarters, Second Offutt. Enemy tripod machines now in sight, reinforced by 3 bogies from the Cedar Falls cylinder. 6 targets altogether. 1 bogey partially crippled, believed hit by artillery shell. Guns now appear silent. Heavy black fog hanging close to the earth. Of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of heat ray. Target now turns east, crossing the I-35. Another straddles Cyclone Stadium. Evident objective is major population centers. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The targets are close together now, and we're ready to attack. Aircraft circling now, ready to strike. Range 1 kilometer, 800 meters, 600, 400, 200. There they go. The giant arm is raised. Green flash. They're spraying us with flame. Altitude 200 feet. Engines are giving out. No chance to release bombs. Only one thing left. Drop on them. Planes and all. We're diving on the first one. Now the engine's gone. CQ-20, CQ-20, CQ-20. This is W0PKJ, Ames, Iowa, calling Offutt Air Force Base. This is Ames, Iowa, calling Offutt Air Force Base. Come in, please. Come in, please. This is Offutt Air Force Base. Go ahead, W0PKJ. 8 bombers in engagement with enemy tripods over Ames. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in direction of Des Moines and point south.
Des Moines Tower, this is Sky 1. Below me I can see poisonous black smoke pouring in from Saylorville Lake. The smoke now reaching Douglas Avenue. Gas masks appear to be useless. People are being urged to move to open spaces. All traffic should use Interstate 35 South and I-80 East. Avoid congested areas. That black smoke is now spreading over...
This is Sue Pritchard, WHO Radio News. I'm speaking to you from the roof of the WHO Radio building at 18th and Grand. The air raid sirens you hear are sounding to warn people to evacuate the city as the Martians approach. In the last 2 hours, an estimated 200,000 people have been moved along roads to the south and east. Interstate 80 East is being kept open for traffic. Want to avoid bridges heading south. I can see the Fluor River Bridge. It's hopelessly jammed. All communication out of Des Moines has been reportedly closed 10 minutes ago. Also reports of no more defenses. The Army wiped out, artillery, air guard, everything. And below me, people are holding services on the street. The streets are all jammed. Wait a minute. I see something about the Capitol building. 5 great machines. The first one is crossing the Des Moines River now, as if a man stepping in a puddle. At the last report, Martian cylinders were falling all over the country, one outside New York, Chicago, St. Louis. They seem to be timed in space. Now, the first Martian is stopping on Grand Avenue. He's just standing there watching, looking over the city. Steel head is even with the principal tower. He's waiting for others, rising like a line of new towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their metal hands. Smoke comes out. It's that black smoke drifting over the city. People in the streets are seeing it, and they're running toward the Raccoon River, hundreds of them. They're dropping like rats. And the smoke's spreading even faster. People are trying to run from it, but it's just no use. They're falling. Now the smoke is crossing 16th Street and 17th Street. It's about 100 feet away. 50 feet.
CQ-20, CQ-20, CQ-20. This is W0PKJ. This is W0PKJ, Ames, Iowa, calling CQ. Is there anyone out there? Is there anyone? Is there anyone on the air? CQ-20, CQ-20. This is W0PKJ.
You're listening to WHO Radio's adaptation of H.G. Wells' Clouds.
Diane, I am obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living man on Earth. I have been hiding out in this empty house near Adele, a small island of daylight, cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life, a life that has no connection with the present at all. Richard Pearson. I looked down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with a professor who lives in Beaverdale, and who on the night of October 30th glimpsed through his telescope an orange splash of light on a distant planet. My wife, my colleagues, My students, my books, my observatory, my world. Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Richard Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there's no human hands left to wind the clocks? Diane, in recording my daily life, I shall try to preserve human history on a piece of magnetic tape that was meant to record the movements of the stars. But I must live. And to live, I must eat. I found some moldy bread in the kitchen and an orange, not too spoiled to swallow. I keep a watch at the window. From time to time, I can see a Martian machine above the dense black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil. Now there's a sort of hissing sound. I see a Martian, mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam as if to dissipate the smoke. I must have fallen asleep, Diane. I'm still exhausted by terror. It's morning. Sun is streaming through the window. The black cloud of gas has lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as if a black blizzard has passed over them. I'm venturing from the house now. I make my way to a road. It must be Highway 169, but there's no traffic here. Here and there, a wrecked car, a dropped piece of luggage, a blackened skeleton. For some reason, I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them. I keep a careful watch. I've seen the Martians feed. If one of their machines appear on the horizon, I'm always ready to fling myself flat on the earth. Ah, here's an apple tree. October. The apples are ripe. I fill the pockets of my lab coat. I must stay alive. For 2 days, I've wandered in a vaguely easterly direction through a desolate world. I finally see another living creature. A small red squirrel in a maple tree. I stare at him and wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at this moment, the animal and I share the same emotion. The joy of finding another living being. Diane, I'm pushing northward. I find dead cows in a field. Beyond, the charred ruins of a dairy farm. The silo remains standing guard over the wasteland, like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Atop the silo is a weather vane. The arrow points north. Yesterday, I came to a city vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off, as if a giant had sliced off the top floors of the office buildings with a sweep of his hand. I reached the outskirts. I found West Des Moines, undemolished, but humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. At this moment, I have the odd feeling that I'm being watched.
Freeze! Where did you come from?
I come from a lot of places. I've been walking from Adele.
Adele, huh? That's where the Martians land.
Yes.
Adele. There's no food here. This is my country. All this end of town over to Walnut Creek. There's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people. Have you seen any Martians?
They've gone over to Des Moines. At night, the sky is alive with their lights, just as if people were still living there. By daylight, you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big away from the airport. I think they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
Then it's all over for mankind. There's just you and I. 2 of us left.
They got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars are probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost one machine. There isn't anything we can do. We're beaten.
Where were you? You're in uniform.
What's left of it? I was in the National Guard. That's a hoot. Wasn't any more a war than there's a war between men and ants.
And we're edible ants. I found that out. What will they do with us?
I thought it all out. Right now, we're caught as we're wanted. The Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. But I don't think they'll keep doing that. They'll start to catch us systematically, keeping the best and storing us in cages and stuff. Instead of rushing around blind, we've got to set ourselves up for the way things are now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress.
If that's true, what is there to live for?
Life. That's what. I want to live. And so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. And I don't mean be caught either. And tamed and fattened and bred like cattle.
What are you going to do?
I'm going on. Right under their feet. I got a plan. We're men. As men, we're finished. We don't know enough. We've got to learn plenty before we've got a chance. And we've got to live and keep free while we learn, see? I thought it all out.
Well, tell me more.
Well, it isn't all of us that are made for wild beasts, and that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. All these little yuppie office workers that used to live in these houses, they'd be no good. They don't have any stuff to them. The Martians will be a godsend for these people. Nice, roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no house payments, no BMW payments, no worries. After a week or so running around the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come back and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
You bet I have. And that ain't all. Those Martians will make pets of them, train them to do tricks. Who knows? They might even get sentimental over a pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. And some, maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
Oh, no, that's impossible. No human being can do it.
Bet they will. There's men who will do it gladly. If one of them ever comes after me.
But in the meantime, you and others like us, where will we live when the Martians own the Earth?
I've got that figured out, too.
Huh?
We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under Des Moines, there are miles of them. The main ones are big enough for anybody. And there's basements, vaults, old mine shafts. You're starting to get the picture, eh? And we'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weak ones. Those guys are out.
And you want me to go with you?
I gave you a chance, didn't I?
Oh, no argument here. Go on.
We've got to make safe places for us to stay in, see? And get all the books we can, science books. That's where men like you come in. We'll raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. It may not be so much after we have learned before. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 their own fighting machines suddenly start off. Heat rays right and left, and not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them. But men, we who have learned the way how. It may even be our time. Geez, can you imagine having one of those beautiful things with its heat ray wide and free? We turn it on the Martians. We turn it on men. We bring everybody down to their knees.
And that's your plan?
You and me and a few more of us, and we own the world.
I see.
Hey, what's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to your world. So long, stranger.
Diane, after leaving the guardsmen, I came to what was the 63rd Street overpass. I climbed over the concrete rubble, anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side. I'm now cautiously making my way down the deserted 235. I've reached 56th Street now, and again, I find black powder and several bodies. An evil, ominous smell coming from some of the nearby houses. I've left the freeway and wandered to downtown. While standing alone in front of the Rouen Center, I caught sight of a lean dog running down 6th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in his jaws and a pack of starving mongrels at his heels. I walked down Locust in the direction of that strange powder, past silent shop windows, displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks, past the Civic Center, silent and dark. Near East 3rd, I noticed the new 91 models in the showrooms facing empty streets. Now, on the eastern horizon, I can see a flock of black birds circling in the sky. Diane, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine standing somewhere behind the Capitol, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. I rushed recklessly across the Capitol parking lot to Walnut and climbed the hill to War Memorial Park. From here, I can see 19 of these giant metal titans standing in silent rows along East 14th Street. Their cowls empty. Their steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. There is no sign of the monsters that inhabit those machines. Wait a minute. Those birds. Diane. Some distance before me, stark and silent, lie the Martians, with the hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead body. Diane, postscript to notes begun October 30th, 1990. Autopsies performed on the Martians show the cause of death to be, well, they were killed by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. Slain, after all men's defenses had failed, by the humblest thing that God, in his wisdom, put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all of deep space, dream. It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us, is the future ordained, perhaps. Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at Drake University, recording this last chapter of the record begun at a deserted farm near Adel. Strange to see from my window the spire of Old Main, dim and blue in an April haze. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see young people strolling on the lawn where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of the bruised earth. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museum where the disassembled parts of the Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall the time when I first saw it, bright and clean-cut, hard and silent, under the dawn of that last great day.
This is Van Harden, here to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. WHO Radio's version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night, so we did the next best thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed central Iowa. You'll be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and that both WHO Radio and Central Iowa are still open for business. So good night, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned here tonight, that grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch. And if your doorbell rings and there's nobody there, that was no Martian. It's Halloween.